Is SEO dead? See, here's the thing. There's this wave of people right now that are saying that SEO is dead because AI search will eventually take over. The answer is it's complicated. I recently did a presentation on this topic and I want to share it with you here today. Due to some technical difficulties, I'm actually going to have to re-record it. So here's the thing. If you're new to AI search or you've been dabbling with it since the early days, I think you're going to learn something from this talk. And not only are you going to see whether or not AI search is important to focus on right now in the middle of 2025, but you're also going to see maybe how it'll be important 2026, 2027. So let's dig into it right now. All right, so how do we show up in AI search, and should we even care? This all started a long time ago when Google changed the game. Okay, Google made it so that we could go into a little box on the internet, type something in, and we could basically learn everything. I think it's funny that the index contains 25 million pages, and they were right to predict that soon it'd be much, much bigger. But something even more important came up along the way. Small businesses that serve local customers were able to get their businesses indexed on Google, which means they're in the Google phone book. And that meant that they could actually drive business to their business through Google. And that's fantastic, right? Contractors, holistic medicine practices, all these businesses have been able to grow on Google and continue to grow even today. It also taught us how to find stuff on the web through this little box right here. But one thing I want you to pay attention to is that when we type into Google, we type in an almost robotic, algorithmic way. We have to put Plumbers Bend, Oregon, or something like that, right? That's not how we would talk to a friend, or how we would ask that question. Like, we would say something like, "Can you recommend a top-rated plumber in my area?" And that's probably not how we talk to a friend, but something like that. Well, there's somebody else changing the game, and that somebody else is ChatGPT. Because now we have another input box that we get to type into, but this one we get to talk to naturally. And every day, there's 122 million daily users on ChatGPT, and that number goes up to 800 million when we're looking at it from a weekly standpoint. Now that does pale in comparison to Google, who has 4.9 billion daily users. And yes, I see that's cut off. Just bear with me, okay? It's a slideshow. But remember, today we're going to be talking about the future. If we're to optimize for the middle of 2025, where we are right now, then yeah, Google SEO is probably the place where we should place our bets. But what about the middle of 2026 or the middle of 2027? The question I ask you, small business owner, is, do you want your business still be around in the middle of 2027? I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you do want your business around in 2 years. So we might have to start thinking a little differently about how we optimize things moving forward. Now let's talk about how people use ChatGPT. This is a very interesting graph here, done by SEMrush here. So 70% of the information, or 70% of the conversations we have with ChatGPT are related to more general chats, coding, writing, creating social media posts, things like that. Apparently Gen Z uses ChatGPT as a replacement for therapists. I don't recommend you do that, but that's apparently how it's being used. Now, 30% of the time we use ChatGPT, it actually is what we would normally use Google for. It's actually like a search intent. And so that's interesting, and we'll go back to this later, but I just wanted to point that out, that not every conversation we have with ChatGPT is related to search. There's a couple definitions we need to get out of the way. AI search is essentially when you use an AI chatbot, a research assistant, or an agent to search the web. Now, those three categories I just mentioned, I will bring those back up later on in case those words are new to you, okay? Now, there's something else I want you to know, and that's LLM. LLM stands for Large Language Model. And basically, what I want you to take away from this talk is that, each model has a different specialty because it's trained on a subset of information. And so what you can think about is that the AI has a certain memory inside of it. And so if we were to ask, ChatGPT, give us an overview of the War of 1812, it would be able to answer that question without having to look it up because that's in its knowledge base. It's in its memory. However, if we asked it what's the score of the Dodgers game yesterday, it's not going to know the answer to that, so it has to search the web. And so that's the big thing to know, is that there's like two different ways that we have to think about these AI models, is that there's information that's baked in, and there's information that it's going to look up. That's important to know. Now, there's 3 ways that we interact with AI either today or we will very shortly. The main way we do it right now is through AI chatbots, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, Perplexity, DeepSeek, the list goes on and on. But these are the big dogs. You're probably using one of these already, especially if you're one of those 122 million people that use it every single day, like me. Now, there's also AI research assistants. Now, I'm not going to dig too much into these right now, but I believe these tools are actually really good right now. So Gemini has a deep research tool, and ChatGPT also has an aptly named deep research tool. And what these things do is when they go to do their search, they don't just search a couple times, they search dozens, if not hundreds of times, scouring the internet for sources to come back with a report. And it's really cool in Gemini because you can usually get an AI podcast, a website, a quiz now. It's not really a matter of if we should have these things, but we do have them. Anyway, I think these tools are useful. I've used them for certain deep research, and later on I'm going to share a video with you that I actually dig into these tools a little bit more. So if you're new to this kind of tool, then don't worry, you'll get to see some real examples in a different video. And then the other way that we're going to interact with AI that's going to keep getting better is using an AI agent. Now, there's a big difference here between an AI agent and an automation. An automation is using a tool like Zapier or Make. You've probably heard about it, maybe seen some YouTube videos about it. And with Zapier or Make, what you're doing is you have a trigger, and that basically starts off a cascade of events that are pre-scripted. Now, you could throw AI in the middle of that, but for the most part, it's not really a true agent unless it's able to do the task fully autonomously. So with stuff like Project Mariner and ChatGPT Operator, you can put in little prompts and AI is supposed to go off and perform the task for you. Now, for security reasons, a lot of this is happening in sandboxes, so it's not your real computer. And also right now, these are just not useful. And so I believe by the end of this year, these tools will be usable because they're pretty much not usable right now. They get stuck on things like cookie consent forms, and they're just still learning. But I think they'll be usable by the end of the year, and I think they'll be useful by the end of next year. But we'll see. My crystal ball is often wrong when it's time to predict the future. And if it did work, I would definitely use it for better uses than marketing. But these are the 3 ways that AI might be suggesting our business. And so what we want to be thinking about is how can we get the chatbots, the research assistants, and the agents to suggest our local businesses when people perform local searches inside of AI. And by the way, if you want to stay up to date on this kind of stuff, then you should definitely check out localseolowdown.com and subscribe to my weekly local SEO newsletter. However, there's going to be a link in the description for an AI masterclass that's going to be free for a limited time. And so make sure when you sign up for the newsletter that you sign up through that link so that way you get all the goodies that I'll talk more about as we go throughout this presentation. Now, is AI search going to be a thing? Well, in my opinion, I think there's a chance because there's a massive opportunity here. Now, I chose a good local search result here. It only has 2 LSAs, local service ads, and 1 sponsor result. But there are times when I look at local search results and there's 3 LSAs, there's 4 sponsor results here, and there's a sponsored map pack result. So I have to scroll, especially on my phone, like 4 flicks before I actually get to the first result. And here's the thing. People don't click on ads. Sometimes when they're at the very bottom of the sales funnel, right? There's like a 2% click-through rate on ads overall. So like basically everybody has agreed this stuff's mostly useless. So why is this here? Well, the answer why this is here is because Google makes $175 billion per year from ads. Okay, they're not going to stop showing ads. But Google's user experience kind of sucks right now. People notice this, and there is a chance for somebody to show up and potentially take advantage of this. So the question for this presentation is going to be, how do we show up in an AI search? But in order to do that, we got to figure out how do we show up in local search today. And it's simple. See, over 90% of online searches go through Google. And so when I'm talking about local SEO, I'm talking about showing up on Google. The first thing we have to do is we got to get that Google business profile, those little rectangles that show up next to the map. You got to get this claim set up, optimized, and verified. You got to start collecting more and better reviews. That's one of the most important ranking factors in the map pack, and it's something you can control as a local business owner. So you want to be working on it. And again, this can be massively helpful to getting leads. With my local SEO agency, we've worked with a few dozen businesses over the last 2.5 years. And I would say that the businesses that get the best results are the ones that predominantly show up in the map pack. And another way to boost yourself up in the map pack is by working on your website. So having a well-structured site that tells Google two things: what you do and where you do it, everywhere, can actually boost up your GBP, but your GBP is limited to a certain amount of geographic area. And so to expand that reach, you want your website to target all of the services that you offer, as well as all the service areas that you offer these services in. So it's massively important that you have a good website. And then all that does is get you to show up. It doesn't get you to show up higher. To show up higher, you have to build authority. And we can all make a website tomorrow, right? It's pretty easy nowadays with all the tools that are out there, but it's not going to have authority. The way you get authority is by getting other websites to point back to your website. And it can't just be any spammy link. It has to be something that has its own authority. And it's particularly good to have it be locally relevant and industry relevant. So what matters for AI search? Well, in order to answer that question, we have to figure out, how does AI search work? And to get into that, we've got to figure out, how does Google work? So when you enter something into the little Google search box, which is called a query, the first thing that Google does is it checks its phone book for relevant sites. So the way search engines work is they crawl the internet and they decide, okay, is this a useful website? If that answer is true, then it indexes it. It puts this into the Google phone book. That's the way I like to think of it. And so when you enter a query, the first thing it does is it says, okay, they're looking for plumbers in Redmond, Oregon. Okay, I'm going to find all the plumbers, and then I'm going to filter it down by just those that are in Redmond. And that's kind of its bucket of results that it's going to start to recommend. It's not going to give us doulas, and it's not going to give us plumbers in Brooklyn. It's going to give us plumbers in Redmond, Oregon. Then the next step it's going to do is it's going to present those results. And for the most part, they're organized by authority level. Now, of course, I don't work for Google. I don't know what the algorithm says, but based on everything I've learned about local SEO is that, a lot of the ranking factors we get hung up on are in the relevancy piece, which is that first bullet point we talked about. But once that's been filtered down, the way Google really sorts results has to do with authority, which we talked about earlier, has to do with getting other websites point at yours, not spam that you get off of Fiverr or something like that, like actual legit backlinks from other websites. So how does AI search work in comparison to how Google works? Well, when you enter a query, there's an initial question that the chatbot asks itself. It says, do I know this already? And obviously, I also don't work for OpenAI, so I don't really know how this works, but it's something like this, right? I'm oversimplifying it to help people out here. So it's wondering, do I know this? Is this in the LLM already? Is this in my knowledge base? Is this in my memory? The answer is yes. It can just answer the question. It doesn't need to go out and dig a little bit deeper. But if it doesn't know the answer, or if you tell it specifically to look it up, then it performs a search. And so when it does that, it's actually using a search engine to start formulating its answer. Now, what's really cool about AI search, and this is why I actually use ChatGPT search a lot, is that it doesn't just perform one search. It's really fast, so it can perform multiple searches. Sometimes it's only a couple, sometimes it's like 5 or so, but it gets extra data that we don't normally get by only doing our one search that we do. Now, I do want to make one big note here, is that it's not actually visiting the website, okay? It's just looking at the code, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later. I should say, that's true of chatbots and research assistants. When it comes to agents will be going to the site, taking screenshots and kind of looking at the site. So that's important. That's an important distinction to make, okay? So for the most part, it's looking at the code. And then the last step is AI presents a result. So it takes all this information, aggregates it, formats it in a way that it thinks will be useful to the user, and it spits it out. As you can see here, I asked for, who are the best plumbers in Redmond, Oregon, and it suggested these 2 local businesses. And that is a nice list because it's giving me some information. It's giving me the phone number. It's still easy to reach out to them, and I can go right to their website. It's actually pretty nice. So which AI chatbot are people using? Again, Google is responsible for over 90% of online searches. Most SEOs only focus on Google SEO because it just doesn't make sense to optimize for Bing and DuckDuckGo. And if you optimize for Google, you're probably going to do okay for Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo and other search engines that are out there. So if there's a clear winner in the AI chatbot game, then we should probably just put most of our eggs in that basket. And sure enough, there is some truth to that. So you can see here, ChatGPT has about 60% of the market share. Microsoft Copilot is about 14%. And in case you didn't know, Microsoft Copilot on the back end is using ChatGPT models. Gemini is at about 13%, and then everybody else is less than 10% for those other slices of the pie. So about 74% of AI chatbot usage is going through a ChatGPT model, and the next biggest slice of the pie is going through a model that's using Google as its search engine. So, I mean, if you're already working on local SEO, you don't have to worry much about Gemini. But how can we really set ourselves up for success to show up for ChatGPT? And the way we do that is by trying to figure out what ChatGPT search engine is. And if you've been subscribed to this channel for a long time, then you already know the answer that's going to be on this next slide. It's Bing. Bing, good old Bing, right? Bing, what is it good for? Well, it's good for helping you show up in ChatGPT search. So we know what matters for local SEO. It's a GBP, it's the website, it's building authority. Again, sorry these slides are cut off. I don't know how to make it better, so just deal with it, all right? So we know what matters for local SEO. What matters for Bing SEO? Well, it's actually not a whole lot different. Instead of Google Business Profile, it has Bing Places. So you want to make sure it's claimed, set up, optimized, verified. Be nice to get some reviews on that bad boy. And, maybe it's not massively helpful for getting leads, but it might help you get a lead down the road. But again, you want to have a well-structured website, and you want to tell Bing two things: what you do and where you do it. And you want to build authority through getting locally relevant, industry relevant backlinks. That sounds pretty similar to what we had to do for local SEO, right? There's just one change. Now there's another change too, and it's the difference between how we get indexed. Okay, so to get into the Google phone book, we're going to use Google Search Console. So if you've ever done SEO before, you probably know that in Google Search Console, you can request indexing, and typically Google will respect that request and they will index your page. This is really good to do in SEO, especially when you're updating pages all the time. Well, it turns out Bing has its own tool, and it's called Bing Webmaster Tools. And that's how you get indexed in Bing and how you show up in Bing's phone book. Now, there is a link in the description. Be sure to check that out, where I'll actually have a video it's like a Notion page. I'll show you what it looks like here. So here it is. So we'll have my talk that I did recently where I dig into like the different uses of AI. But this video right here is actually how to rank higher in ChatGPT. So you'll see a practical example of how to use Bing Webmaster Tools and other stuff in this video. So again, link in the description to get that AI Masterclass. It's free right now. Price might go up over time, so make sure you nab it now. And the only trade is that you got to sign up for the newsletter, which is actually pretty good, I think. So yeah, check it out. And so what are the results? What happens when you do these kind of things? Well, if you search for SEO agency Bend, Oregon, sometimes you'll see Then Can Design show up first. And I wouldn't necessarily know anything about those guys, but if they're showing up first, I would probably listen to the people behind that, right? So now the real question is, how do we duplicate this for your business, right? We want you to show up higher in ChatGPT search. And again, I have included links to videos that will show you exactly how to do that. So make sure that you do that. Now this brings up a bigger question. Do you really have to optimize for ChatGPT search? And it's an interesting question. I'm going to call myself out. In that video I was talking about earlier, I actually did a presentation a little over a month ago, and I posted the replay to that on the channel where I showed this graph, and I found out that this was fake news because when I was doing research for that topic or that talk, I came across this graph here. And it shows that ChatGPT had a 4.33% market share. I rounded that up to 5 because it looks cooler. And I talked about how doomsday, blah, 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 we need to optimize for ChatGPT because of this. And guess what? A lot of marketers are referencing this graph, but it's kind of BS. So here's a better graph. Or actually, here's the thing that got me thinking a little bit more. Is when I was doing this research for this latest talk, I came across this information which says ChatGPT might get a 1% of market share by 2025. And I said, well, wait a minute, didn't we just say there was a 4% market share? What's up with this 1% number? And what happened is this number includes all ChatGPT queries. But if you remember, they're not all search-based. So it actually looks more like this. And it all has to do with this graph we talked about a long time ago. Remember, 70% of ChatGPT queries have nothing to do with search, and only 30% are triggering search-based results. And so when you actually compare apples to apples, ChatGPT has less than 1% of the market share, and Google continues to hold 93.5% of market share for searches. Google search is 373 times bigger than ChatGPT search. And so if we're asking the question, do you really have to optimize for ChatGPT search? My answer is what I said earlier. Remember, we're not talking about today. Today, we're talking about the future. Now, I got a little wrinkle to throw in all this here in a second, but I just want to take a moment to think about the possibilities. Maybe ChatGPT settles in around that 1% to 2% mark, and it ends up like a Bing or DuckDuckGo, where it's just another option out there that you might utilize for certain use cases, but for the most part, it won't chip away Google. Now, there's another scenario where that massive opportunity I showed you earlier is a huge flaw in Google's strategy, and ChatGPT might be able to chip away, take away 5, 10, 20% of the market share. Also, Google has this antitrust case against it where it's probably going to have to sell Chrome. And in case you haven't been keeping up like I have, Chrome is the reason why Google search is so good. They've been collecting our data for years. And so when somebody else buys it, maybe OpenAI, their search engine is probably going to get better really fast. And so Google might have a serious problem here. But remember, it's Google and they don't want to lose. And so that's why I got to mention Google's AI wildcard. You see, about a year ago, Google released AI overviews. And at first, these weren't super helpful, and they did stuff like tell us to put glue on our pizza because they were citing sarcastic Reddit posts, which I thought was hilarious. But these have actually gotten better and better as the year have gone on. And I think like a lot of us can agree that for the most part, AI overviews are pretty helpful. Google claims, and there's a lot of secondary data that backs this up now, that when people get an AI overview, they tend to keep searching, which is what they also do on ChatGPT search. And that's interesting. If you can get your brand to show up in an AI overview, it might not lead to a click or a conversion, but it might help people in their process as they're building and they're getting closer to making a buying decision. At I/O this year, Google unveiled AI mode and they released it to the public. It's been out for a few months now. And I have to say, from using it, I don't think it's very good right now. But again, remember the glue on the pizza a year ago. AI mode's not great right now, especially when it comes to local searches. I do think the map pack is a better experience, but this is only going to get better. Google seems very bullish on AI mode. So I think this is going to keep growing. So, I mean, there's a scenario where, yeah, AI search may start to take over, but maybe Google is the one that's leading the charge. Hey, ChatGPT has the market share in AI right now, but there's a different model that's been on top of the leaderboards for a long time, and that's Gemini. So I'm curious to see how this shakes down. Now, I'd like to end this video by telling you exactly what you should be doing for AI search, in my opinion, while also balancing that local SEO. So essentially how you can optimize for showing up in the middle of 2025 right now, but also getting yourself set up to maybe show up in the tools we'll be using more in 2026, 2027, and beyond. But before I do that, just a quick ad read for our new product that we have at ThenCan Designs. This is an SEO roadmap. This is different. We've never offered this before. What I've been hearing from all the business owners that I've worked with for a very long time is they're usually in one of two spots. Either A, they've been burned by an SEO company before, so they don't trust us, and that's understandable. Or they're just about to get started, but they're really confused about all the noise that's out there. What's really most important, and can I really believe what's out there? And so the whole point of this SEO roadmap is to essentially give you what we would do for your SEO, and that's it. We don't get access to your site, but we still tell you exactly what you need to do for your GBP, do keyword research database, ongoing SEO optimization implementation guide. So basically we're telling you like, this is how you should be optimizing your pages and how you can repeat this in different service areas that you offer services in. And we even give you some quick wins as far as building links and getting that authority, and you get to meet with us along the way. So we check in, make sure we're headed in the right direction at the start, and then you check back in with me at the end and we go through the whole thing. Now, I'm not going to show the price on here because I know it's going to change over time, but if you're interested in this, there's going to be a link just to our contact form submission. Just write SEO roadmap on it and I'll send you some more information, okay? If you think you might be interested in this, there will be a link to the SEO roadmap page where you can learn more about this, and if it feels like it's the right move for you, you can get it cooking right there on that page. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about what you should be doing right now. Well, the first thing you should be doing is focus on that GBP. It's the first thing that shows up in the search results. So put 95% of your energy there. And then every once in a while, circle back to Bing Places. Actually, if you set it up right, you can have your Bing Places sync with your Google Business profile. And by the way, I'll show you how to do that in that AI Search Masterclass, which again is going to be linked in the description. Next, you want to optimize your website. If you're not really sure what that means, actually put a whole bunch of our best videos in there for these next couple bullet points to help you out on this. The next thing you want to do is make sure that anytime you make changes to your website, you submit to Google Search Console. And every once in a while, go into Bing Webmaster Tools and also submit there. You want to keep building authority. Again, I've got some videos in there that will show you how to do that in that masterclass. So again, this is like right now it's free. And I know I'm going to put a price tag on it eventually. So definitely get it right now while it's hot off the presses. Now, this is a little controversial, but I think that putting schema into your site can be helpful. Remember, the AI chatbots and the research assistants are just looking at the code. Well, you know what code is? Schema is a type of code, and it's actually not that hard to get this on your website. And you can even use ChatGPT to help generate it for you. And so I had a recent video where I showed how to do this. And so if I'm smart, I will put it up here. Where am I at? Right here. And so you'll be able to see that video. It's towards the end of the video. It's the last couple points where I talk about schema, but make sure you check that part of the video out because it's going to be helpful. If I remember, I need to add this link, but I'm going to add it to the AI Search Masterclass. If I forget, leave a comment below and I'll re-add it to the masterclass, okay? And then the last thing is try to show up everywhere without burning yourself out. And really for this, I'm talking about GEO, Generative Experience Optimization. It has other names out there because we haven't agreed on a name for it yet as far as like industry-wide. But if you can show up inside of the LLM itself, that makes you way more likely to show up when somebody's doing an AI search. But for businesses that have marketing budgets under $100,000, showing up on every single social platform, showing up in press releases, showing up in local media, all these things, like it's probably not feasible. And I'm going to take a wild guess if you're on this channel, your marketing budget is less than $100,000 per month, probably less than $100,000 per year, right? Probably a lot less than that. And that's okay. Right? So is mine. Trust me. And so the thing is, when it comes to that last bullet point, it's like, this is the advice that people are giving right now, but it's really not that feasible. But if you focus on these first 5 things, you're going to be in an awesome spot and probably doing a heck of a lot more than your competition is. And so, the big takeaway is to make sure that you're doing what works to show up right now. And what matters right now is still Google local SEO, which is exactly why you're subscribed to this channel and exactly why you're watching videos that I put out, because I'm trying to help you show up today. But we can't ignore the changes that are happening. AI search is kind of good for some results. And if it gets better at local, I think there's an opportunity that it could chip away. So you've learned some ways to show up for ChatGPT search, and you might be saying, what should I do now, Sam? Well, 2 things. 1, go get that AI Masterclass while it's free. It's the first link in the description below. And then once you get done with that, I never know which way to point, check out the video right here, because this is the video where I actually show you how I got our business to rank on ChatGPT. So you want to check that one out. But again, it's also linked in the AI Masterclass. So just go get that link, dang it. All right, I'll see you in the next one.